mean, we're slower than a GP2 car at the moment, so...
George seems oddly excited.
Really excited to get going into the season.
And Lando's starting the beef early. This is every driver's thoughts about 2026, and you wouldn't believe how angry Verstappen is.
Current regulations are not helping the longevity of my career.
Let's start with the most successful driver on the current Formula 1 grid. Lewis has been around during the pre-hybrid and hybrid era, overcoming every regulation change the sport has introduced over the last 2 decades, but 2026 has seen the 7-time champ issue one of the direst warnings yet, after brutal testing in Bahrain, which included a rare spin. Lewis described the new rulebook as complex, painting a picture of an engineering landscape which has completely lost touch with the pure essence of the sport. However, his most significant comment came immediately after the first week of Bahrain testing. He basically said it could be slower than a GP2 car and that it feels like running monster-level downforce.
I mean, we're slower than a GP2 car at the moment, so it's... basically, it's like Monza downforce everywhere.
Maybe that explains the new rotational wing for the Scuderia.
That is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
But getting a little more serious, Lewis has also pointed out that in 2026 we might not see the fastest driver on pole. He iterated that during testing the Ferrari had to do LICO for about 600 meters each lap to have enough energy to do a fast lap. So it's clear that one of the big names is not happy with the new direction of the sport.
Impossible to know at the moment.
At least Charles had some kinder words, but first we look at the oldest driver on the grid. One clear thing is just how much the Aston has been struggling with the new Honda power unit. Despite having the aerodynamic genius of Adrian Newey, Aston is still significantly off the pace, and this might even see them start the season behind the likes of Audi and Cadillac. But the engine isn't the biggest issue for the Spaniard.
You have a little bit less grip and you have this energy management that you have to be a little bit careful on how much you spend the energy. To make a fast lap, you need to distribute the energy on the straights to go fast, and on the corners you don't want to waste energy.
He reiterated Hamilton's concerns about having to lift and coast through corners, meaning that the one area that differentiates a good driver from a great one doesn't actually exist. What should worry most F1 fans is the fact that driving these cars is not exciting anymore, and that drivers will be so focused on hitting energy regen targets that pushing flat out might be impossible. With the steering wheel's engine map now dictating your speed, the days of gaining a tenth by taking a little more risk are now a thing of the past.
And Massa's getting sorted up by the pack, and down the inside goes Daniel Ricciardo. What a move from the Australian! He's picked up a couple of places.
And I'm willing to bet many F1 purists agree that seeing this version of Alonso is truly sad, possibly reigniting rumours that 2026 could be the final time we see the Spaniard at the pinnacle of motorsport. While Alonso is mourning the loss of flat-out racing and calling it sad, Albon is seeing a golden opportunity. Speaking on the new regs, Albon's been quite vocal.
Yeah, they're interesting. Basically, in terms of driving, they're a challenge. I think between myself and Carlos, we're enjoying the challenge of driving them. They are so different.
He admits Williams is playing catch-up, but at least the car is slowly hitting the targets they expect. Perhaps the most controversial comment from the Thai Brit is who he believes will come to grips with these regulation changes best.
I have my person. I don't think I should say it, but I think I have my person. Go for it. I think it's Lewis.
Perhaps, but I think Ferrari need to figure out how to create a solid race strategy first, if that's even possible. What's really frightening from Albon is that the driver feel no longer matters, and that team simulations will be front and center to give drivers feedback to find the most optimal way to drive a lap. Meanwhile, Sainz wants the FIA to be more open-minded. With Williams looking much better in 2025, Carlos Sainz has been cautiously optimistic about the new rules. The Spaniard is focused on the amount of brain space these new regulations take up, with his biggest concern being the fast-flowing tracks of Jeddah and Melbourne. Carlos has made a valid point, suggesting that battery recovery will be extremely hard around these tracks, with limited braking zones, and that extreme lift and coast tactics will ruin the sport for fans. At least he has a lot of LICO experience from his days at Ferrari. As for the rookies, for one man it is the opportunity of a lifetime. The new rookie has been quiet on the regulations, mostly focusing on himself and even stating that he's excited for the new season.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I mean, obviously it's very different to drive, so it's exciting, and it's fun also to drive an F1, but you feel it's different.
The one advantage you might find is that the regs could be the ultimate rookie equalizer. With everyone struggling, Lindblad is just focused on mastering the car. Now, speaking of the 2025 rookies, you wouldn't want to believe who is the most vocal. But first, let's look at Verstappen's next victim. Isaac Hadjar finds himself in the most heavily scrutinized seat in Formula 1, stepping up from his rookie season to partner Max Verstappen at Red Bull Racing. And this is perhaps the greatest opportunity for a driver to match Verstappen ever. As for the new regulations, Hadjar hasn't been shy, echoing the thoughts of Verstappen, but adding that he is more optimistic to prove himself at the front of the grid. One of the things he mentioned is just how much slower the cars are going to be, but he capped it off by saying it is still a racing car. Following 2 weeks of testing, it seems like Hadjar is feeling confident and ready for Bahrain.
The other runnings we got to readapt, so it was never boring, to be honest. So yeah, I feel as ready as I can heading into Melbourne.
The sheer difficulty of these cars could finally leave us with a teammate that can go toe-to-toe with the Dutchman. And since we're talking about drivers matching Max, it is great to see the Mexican Minister of Defense back in the sport. There is no doubt that having Perez back in F1 is incredible, but one thing Checo noted was that this is the biggest regulation change he has faced in his career.
I think these cars are massively different to what we've been used to, and it's still very early days, you know. I think, in my opinion, this has been the biggest regulation change I've had in my career.
First of all, Cadillac is the newest team on the grid, and no one really expects them to be fighting for titles in 2026. But not having to focus on the 2025 season means the American manufacturer had much more time to focus on mastering the new regs. Checo's biggest fear is that the on-track product might suffer. At least, the Mexican is happy to be back and excited for his new challenge.
Starting from new regulations, I think it's fairly good for having a year off.
Perhaps taking a break for a year will indeed make it easier to get to grips with the changes. But there's one driver who just can't wait for the regulation changes, and it's kind of pissing everyone off. So before we get to him, what has the best rookie of 2025 got to say? Now entering his second full season with Mercedes, Antonelli has arguably been one of the best performers throughout the Bahrain testing. Antonelli is one of the few drivers who hasn't been too critical of the new regulations, mostly calling it a golden opportunity to level the playing field. He believes this massive rule change resets the entire grid, wiping away the years of ingrained muscle memory the veterans rely on and forcing everyone to relearn the cars from scratch. The young Italian believes the 50-50 split isn't a flaw, but an entirely new game. I'm willing to bet the only reason he's talking so highly of the new regs is because Mercedes is probably sitting on the best car, with everyone believing the W17 will dominate from the onset in Australia. His comments were quite generic, but we all know Oscar doesn't mince his words, unlike his teammate, who's conducting a psychological war on the grid. Piastri agrees with the younger generation on one key point. The F1 has never been about purely flat-out driving. He is one of the few drivers who believes the defining trait of a great racing driver is managing extreme complexity, and pointed out that juggling regeneration targets is no different than thermal tire degradation. Oscar sees it as just another variable the driver needs to manage, but where the Australian does have a little criticism is on the safety and practical application of the new rules. He didn't mince his words in Bahrain, warning the FIA that the start procedures are a recipe for disaster.
Oh, nearly!
Oscar predicts a massive disparity off the line.
And look, they all get away pretty well, but Max Verstappen slower than Esteban Ocon, who nips past, says thank you very much, and Lewis Hamilton getting the best start of all.
And a driver could lose up to 7 positions from one miscalculation before turn 1. He further explained that the new aerodynamic modes could be disastrous when the grid is packed tightly after the first lap. Now, Oscar is known for pragmatism, but there is no one as pragmatic as Nico Hülkenberg. The German is by no means joining the chorus of doom and gloom. Like many of the rookies, he's dismissed many complaints, stating that he doesn't really care about what the other drivers say. The Hulk is one of the few drivers to point out that it is still a race car at the end of the day, achieved in a slightly different way, and that no one truly knows the pace until everyone pulls their pants down in quali. He has in fact warned the media and many of his competitors about making wild assumptions, and definitely falls into the group of drivers who seem kind of happy about the reset. It is expected and quite funny because his teammate has been singing a different tune. But what has Ollie been up to? Behrman has been following most of the other younger drivers.
No, it's not that, is it?
Taking a grounded approach to the new chaos. The Ferrari heir apparent has stated that the cars feel strange and mentioned the cornering speeds like Alonso, but has stated that this is Formula One's new normal. However, he did highlight a massive hidden challenge, the sheer mechanical intricacy of the power units, because the new 50-50 split systems are so incredibly complicated to diagnose. It's clear that Ollie is enjoying these new regs more than most.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to continue the learning, to continue the progress.
And it seems like that trend is continuing among the youngsters. Just take Colapinto, who will finally be embarking on his first full campaign in 2026. Following his turbulent entry, he is fully embracing the new chaos, stating that the overhaul has leveled the playing field. He not only mentioned this as a clean slate for everyone, but also mentioned the learning curve for both drivers and the engineers. But I bet Franco is just looking to enjoy his first season as a full-time driver and make it to the end of the season without being replaced. So what about his veteran teammate, who doesn't have to treat the chaos as a career lifeline? One thing that is becoming clear is that not all drivers are mincing their words like the young drivers. Gasly, driving the same car Ferrari's Colapinto is much more skeptical about the product. Entering another touch season with the French outfit, he has been brutally honest about the bizarre physical sensations of the new active era. His biggest concern isn't so much the power split, but more the unpredictability of following the car ahead with heavily reduced downforce. Gasly fears Sunday afternoons will simply become an extreme exercise in tyre conservation and battery survival, but for the most part he is more positive than his previous teammate. Now entering his second season with Haas, Ocon delivered one of the most dramatic assessments of the 2026 regulations yet, which certainly brings into question whether karting is still preparing these drivers for F1. He compared the shift of the new regulations to jumping from a high-planted Formula 1 machine into a sliding rally car, even stating that overtakes look significantly more difficult. Another big problem is the big drop in front grip when following, and we could already see the Haas sliding away in Bahrain. But most importantly, he echoed many drivers, stating that driving an F1 car is no longer fun. At least Lawson had a few good things to say about these regulations. If Ocon believes the new cars have completely rewritten the rules of racecraft, Liam Lawson is discovering that they have also rewritten the physical toll on the drivers. Lawson is preparing for his second season with the Bulls and has given quite a few interesting comments. He acknowledged that the corner speeds are slower, but stated that it might be easier on the neck. This means that basically drivers don't need to sustain those massive G-forces for such long periods. Yet he didn't really criticize the new rules, mostly remarking on the new cognitive shift and calling the 50-50 split an alien style of driving. For Liam, it seems like his main focus is rather to understand and master the new regulations. Unfortunately, not all the young drivers are eagerly looking to adapt to the new machinery. Gabi has been one of the rising stars of the 2025 Formula 1 season, and with Nico by his side, I expected him to be more focused on breaching the learning curve. But one problem has been plaguing the Brazilian, similar to what Oscar has been dealing with: the race starts. He's warned about the new start procedures and how it takes up to 10 seconds to spool the new turbos. Not from the only Brazilian to the only Finn on the grid. After spending a year on the sidelines as a reserve driver, the Flying Finn has made a highly anticipated return to the grid to help build the brand new Cadillac team. For the most part, Bottas is concerned about the massive spike in engine torque when exiting the corners, feeling that it could unsettle the car. Well, I guess if you have a full battery, that would matter. Bottas has mostly embraced the rest of the regulations, shifting his focus more towards improving the car. I guess when you're fighting for your job, it doesn't really help complaining. But for Stroll, one of the greatest drivers on the grid, the regulations just suck. As I mentioned earlier, Aston is looking like perhaps the worst car currently on the grid, and Stroll has been one of the most vocal about the new regulations.
Yeah, a lot of things to work on, for sure. We've had issues last couple of weeks in Barcelona and again yesterday, so...
He called it a science project, with his biggest concern being the heavy reliance on electrical harvesting. Like Alonso, the Canadian doesn't like the slow cornering speeds, and even took a jab at Russell defending the rules by saying whoever's winning by 30 seconds in Melbourne naturally won't care about how terrible the cars actually feel to drive. And purists might agree with Stroll, suggesting F1 return to naturally aspirated engines. Speaking of Russell, the current favourite is oddly excited. If there's one man smiling, it is George Russell. The Brit has lost patience with the endless complaining and is the only one truly standing up to defend the new era. He raised the handling of the new chassis and said the cars are much more agile to control.
The cars do generally feel like you feel it being smaller. You can feel that weight reduction compared to previous years. So I think from that aspect as well, it's gone in a good direction.
Rather than panicking over the unnatural lift and coast techniques, Russell offered a brilliant historical perspective. He pointed out that every era of Formula 1 has featured bizarre driving quirks, comparing the current battery management to the way Ayrton Senna uniquely blipped his throttle through corners in the 80s just to keep the primitive turbo spinning. It is clear that Mercedes and Russell are no longer focusing on aero, believing that the variability in electrical deployment will outsmart aero limitations. Mercedes is definitely hiding some performance in the W17. Now, I said that Charles is one of the only veterans to praise the new regulations. Maybe not as much as George, but he isn't too bothered by it. Maybe that's the side effect of being trapped at Ferrari for years. He has been remarkably honest about the driving experience, stating that it isn't the most fun car to drive. Charles has been frustrated by the monitoring of battery levels and stated that attacking other drivers will be very instinctive. His most interesting comment is about the psychological warfare, stating drivers might not want to make an overtake and use the battery, only to lose the position later. He has also stated that other teams are using complex engine modes to high performance ahead of Melbourne, most critically Mercedes and Red Bull.
Because with this new system, there are so many ways you can really hide your performance more than previous years. So in terms of performance in itself, it's very difficult to know.
But you wouldn't believe the psychological masterclass Lando's putting on display. Coming off a spectacular championship victory, the now #1 McLaren driver initially approached the 2026 regulations with a massive wide-eyed smile. Lando went as far as telling Verstappen to retire. He praised the car and stated that driving it was a lot of fun. But I guess since his breakup with his new girlfriend hit the media, his tune has changed. Recently, Lando's been echoing some of the same sentiments as his biggest rival, and he even stated that the early season comments were to see everyone's reaction and possibly annoy everyone else. Yet the exposure of Bahrain has made him realize that the dominance has faded, and now Lando has stated publicly that this isn't the purest form of racing. Despite the wild swings in comments, the current champ seems to be more than happy to focus on racing and receive that massive paycheck. But the one man who has been setting the world alight is Max Verstappen. Since the announcement of the new regulations in 2022, Verstappen has been vocal about how bad it is for the sport.
I've seen the data and already on the simulator as well. To me, it looks pretty terrible.
The Dutchman has called it Formula E on steroids.
If anything, I could tell you it's probably like Formula E on steroids.
And even stated that these regulations are making it harder for him to stay in the sport. Max iterated that when he's 16, no one will care about whether they won 4 or even 10 world titles, suggesting nothing is keeping him excited in the sport. His worst comment is calling it anti-racing, and that the best lap times are no longer determined by how late someone can brake, but rather how much energy a driver can save 3 corners prior. Max even doubled down, stating that many drivers could be good here, and he doesn't even want to be close to Formula E. And given Verstappen's impressive performance in GT3 during the 2025 season, it could be possible that he will have a couple more outings during the 2026 season. As of right now, opinions are pretty mixed between drivers. Veterans are complaining, rookies are excited, and I'm willing to bet whoever's leading by the summer break will feel completely different, unless it's George. So what's everyone actually bitching about now? Check out this next video on what actually changed for 2026, and as always, thanks for watching.